Hi, everyone, and welcome to CDO Magazine series of one-on-one interviews with CDOs, data leaders, and key influencers. I'm your host, Robert Lutton, Vice President, Sandhill Consultants, coming to you today from Toronto, Canada, working on behalf of the CDO Magazine. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Lauren Maffeo, who is the senior, if I get it right, the senior tech service designer at SteamPunk and author of the recent Designing Data Governance from the Ground Up book. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
The pleasure is all ours, and it was really interesting to talk to an author who's I think you're a first-time author. Is that correct?
I am. This is my first book.
So, well, first of many, we hope. But so it'd be interesting if we can, for our audience, to kind of start with a couple of background questions to get our audience a little bit more familiar with you. And when I was doing research on your book and on you, I noticed that you had several outstanding achievements, and I wanted our readers to know about this. You currently work for SteamPunk, is that correct?
I do. I'm a service designer for SteamPunk.
And I think that's where you kind of designed the playbook for data governance for your own internal teams. Is that correct?
It is. So we have internal playbooks at SteamPunk that we use to guide all of our employees across delivery regarding key areas of the business, whether they relate to design and strategy, what we call data exploitation, cybersecurity, and data governance is an emerging area for us, in large part because clients are not requesting it to the degree that they might request services like cybersecurity.
Right.
But that is slowly changing. And so I did work with our data exploitation practice lead to define what data governance delivery should look like and what the key areas are that we should prioritize when we do deliver data governance expertise to our clients.
You also had 4 years at Gartner. So getting into Gartner is an achievement of itself. And you actually were there for 4 years.
Yes, I was. I was there from 2016 to 2020. So I was there through the beginning of the pandemic.
Well, I think Paul had challenges through the pandemic, but thank goodness you lasted through it and made it through the other side. And I think that you were at one time a content specialist that you were hired to grow leadership across the organization and develop strategic online content for your channels.
I was. So I started in tech after serving as a reporter. So I began my career in tech as a journalist covering tech for freelance publications like The Guardian and The Next Web. And I was living in London at the time, so I specialized in reporting on the European tech sector, which at the time
Right.
was small but growing very rapidly. And after a few years, I realized that for many reasons, I wanted to start working in the tech sector. And for many journalists, going into marketing is a very natural first step. And it's where many end up because it involves a lot of writing,
Right.
storytelling, distilling key points into bullets that everybody should be able to understand. So it's a very transferable skill set from journalism to marketing. So I did initially start working on the content side of marketing for a Silicon Valley based SaaS startup. And then from there, I went to Gartner, where I worked as a research analyst specializing in business intelligence technologies, specifically AI techniques like machine learning and natural language processing. And now I am at SteamPunk, and I've been here as a service designer for federal clients for the last 2.5 years.
The entire history that you got from the reporting to the content that you've written to working in SteamPunk has really, I would assume, led you up to the creating of your publishing and writing and publishing of your first book, Designing Data Governance from the Ground Up. So let me ask you, and for our listeners, this entire topic, whether it's split into a couple of sessions, is going to be on Lauren's book, Designing Data Governance from the Ground Up. But if I may ask, what inspired you to write your book, Designing Data Governance from the Ground Up?
It was really firsthand experience. When I started as a research analyst at Gartner, I covered a pretty broad range of various cloud software segments, specifically project management and accounting software. And then about 2 years in, I really developed a strong interest in artificial intelligence technologies, how to distinguish between them, how to use AI for various business use cases. I was also really intrigued by this idea of bias in AI and what it meant. I think because of my journalism background, I started with the end outcome, which was that people can be influenced and affected by biased AI. And then I wanted to work backwards to figure out why that was the case. I think in many tech roles, it's the reverse, but I brought a different perspective. And to answer your question about what inspired this book, when I started researching AI technologies, I realized that the narrative about AI is really inaccurate to a degree that's concerning. It's often portrayed as something sentient, as a entity that will replace human labor and jobs altogether. And the more I dug into it, the more I realized that AI-powered technologies are just data. And it's powered on large amounts of data that are unprecedented and growing all the time. And that volume of data is really what's new rather than a lot of the technologies themselves. But the challenge I found as a research analyst was that data maturity on behalf of most organizations was very low. Gartner is a real leader in the space in terms of reporting on technology trends across organizations, on developing matrices and frameworks to help C-suite leaders figure out where they are on their digital transformation journeys. And when it comes to the AI journey, there is a real lack of quality assurance. There's a real lack of governance at the most basic levels in most organizations, both public and private. And that is a huge hindrance, which prevents leaders from investing in those more advanced AI technologies. Because if you train a machine learning model on poor quality data, you're going to get a suboptimal outcome.
Right.
And then from Gartner, I went from researching, technical trends to working on a technical team, working with cloud architects and data engineers and UX, UI architects to build different interfaces, redesign services, create blueprints for data pipelines. And there I realized the problem was even worse than I thought, because many of the clients that we see are really at the very beginning of their data governance journeys, that by which I mean they have a lot of data in their possession, but they have no mechanisms to assure quality control, to automate key aspects of their pipelines, to really segment data according to business use cases. And so again, we're seeing this continuous trend of very low data maturity. And that really prompted me to write this book, because I am a practicing service designer. I fundamentally believe that data governance is not only a cultural challenge, but a design problem, and that taking a design thinking attitude towards it can help organizations think of the problem differently and conceive of solutions for data governance.
There is a lot to unpack there, but I appreciate the understanding that the narrative that AI is not as advanced as we might presume it would be. It's definitely something that will rest assure a lot of our users out there. It's not out to replace your job. It's a tool. It's a tool to be used. But Lauren, let me ask you, in your opinion, you kind of mentioned a broad aspect of things there. What do you think is the most important aspect of data governance?
Well, when we talk about data governance, I'm really talking about the people, processes, and tools used to manage data quality in your organization at scale. And by data quality, I mean that data has been vetted and is fit for its intended use, so that when someone receives the clean data for their own use in a Tableau dashboard or for some other purpose, they can be assured that this data is of sound quality quality and that users can trust the data. There is a huge problem with trust, broadly speaking, across institutions, and that includes trust in data. There is so much of it, and the proliferation of it is causing a lot of challenges because data can very easily conflict each other, and it can cause a lot of challenges for organizations who want to uphold that trust in their data. And so when I think about the biggest aspect of data governance, it really starts with understanding what you want data in your organization to do and how using it is going to help you do what you were created to do. So chapter 1 of the book talks about defining what your company's mission statement is. That sounds like a very lofty goal, but many readers, I think, would see that and say, well, I know what my business does, so why do I need to articulate it that way? But the reality is, you look at some of the world's most famous brands, and they all have very clear mission statements for why they exist. And I think if you fundamentally do not see data as something that upholds and enhances that mission statement, you will only be minimally successful, because if you're not taking that approach, it means that you're not thinking of how to use data for particular business use cases. You're not thinking about which data you own is the best fit to solve that use case. You're not thinking about data domains and ownership and stewardship. I really believe that everything about data governance and automation falls from knowing what you want data to do for you. And so if you are not thinking of it at the absolute highest level, then I think a lot of your efforts will be futile.
Fit for use, trust in the data, understand your mission statement, and go for the highest level. Couldn't agree more. Those are key aspects for data governance and data governance programs. But tell me, the reverse side of that. What have you seen? What experiences have you got as for common misconceptions about data governance that you hope to address in your book?
The biggest misconception I still see is that governance is viewed as a standalone entity that is divorced from the rest of your efforts. In other words, right. I have actually had someone say to me, we'll do data governance once we deploy this project. Right. And that is 100% the wrong way to be looking at it. If you are not starting with governance and standards to guide the rest of your project, then there's really no point in doing data governance at the end. That's not really how it works. I mean, of course, you should be doing retrospectives. You should be looking at what went well, what didn't go well, so that you can optimize for the future. But governance is first and foremost what you do at the beginning. And the reason that I am so excited to be speaking to you for CDO Magazine is that I truly believe it's a top-down effort. That's the other thing that I would say, is that governance is viewed at many times as an everything and nothing endeavor, meaning right. that everyone owns it and therefore no one owns it. And that's only half correct, because data governance should be a shared effort across technical and non-technical stewards. But fundamentally, data governance is a huge part of the CDO's job. The CDO is not a technical executional role. It is fundamentally a business strategy role, which is supposed to discuss what are the most strategic ways to utilize data in safe, quality ways across an organization. And that is governance. And that brings me to another misconception, which is that people believe data governance is something new that they have to introduce. The reality is, I believe most organizations are doing governance today. They just don't realize that they're doing it, and they haven't formalized it through documentation, processes, automation, things of that nature. And so ultimately, when I talk about data governance, the key phrase I try to get across to audiences is automate your standards. Data governance is not meant to live in a wiki or in your Confluence documentation for nobody to look at it. If you are not creating data governance guidelines and then figuring out ways to work with your DevSecOps team to automate those standards throughout your environments, then the governance is somewhat futile. So you really want to focus on ways that allow you to not only create those standards, but then scale them across the org in a sustainable way, including in your dev environment.
Lauren, thank you very much indeed for your time today. I hope that the book is a big smash hit. On behalf of the CDO Magazine, we appreciate you providing your time today, sharing your knowledge. We certainly hope to have you come back and share your knowledge and experience again on the continuing program of data governance.
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. For our listeners, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you.